Mr. Brian O'Loughlin, welcome back to the podcast.
Hello, sir. Was it the last one Christmas?
It was the big cinema one in the art gallery. Yeah. How are you doing?
Oh, I felt like shit then, but I feel better now.
Okay, sure. We need to have an embargo, by the way, on us speaking when you come in, because it's taken us a fucking hour to set up all the gear since you came into the podcast.
Are you blaming me for that? The conversation, or is that your fault? It's my fault.
Well, it's not my fault. I'm trying to set up the gear.
All right.
Anyway, we'll dive into this. Thanks for coming back. You're feeling better now. Why were you feeling shit?
I was feeling overwhelmed and I was feeling burnt out essentially at the end of last year.
Okay.
That's what it was. So I may have came across like I was feeling okay, but I was kind of lying to myself that I was feeling okay. Actually, the very first thing, even Rob said it to me, you say to me on the podcast, "How you doing, Brian?" I was like, "I'm great."
Okay.
And Rob was like, "What are you saying, man?
Yeah.
You're not great." I was like, "Yeah, no, I'm not great."
But you're great now.
I'm feeling better, yeah. Definitely.
How do we know if we can trust you or not? I don't know.
You can't, but like I'm telling you, I feel great. So
Okay.
I feel great.
I'll take your word for it. Do you want to introduce us to the topic for the podcast today?
Yeah, well, we're talking about this because we've actually talked about this a lot over the last kind of few weeks, never mind, a few months, around the idea of creating space in your life, day to day, week to week, personally, professionally. It's certainly an area I think that we all struggle with. As I mentioned, I burnt myself out slightly at the end of last year. It's something that I have refined and processed. I know for myself when I create that space, I'm better. I enjoy life better. I'm much more engaged with my family. I can be achieving my goals in a much more kind of freer manner, for almost want of a better word. And then when I don't kind of do those things, it's normally because the space has not been created, and maybe I'm kind of just living with no real intention.
Yeah.
How about you?
It's interesting. I sent a newsletter out on Monday.
Really good newsletter.
Thank you. About this particular topic, and in it I mentioned that every now and again in your life there's a message that comes across that's probably been there forever, but you're in a space that you need it, or it starts to resonate, or really starts to kind of poke at something inside you. And this idea of creating space has been doing that for me, and obviously for you as well, over the last kind of 5 or 6 months, really. And I think I was having a good think about this as I was writing the newsletter. What it seems to me is that nowadays, and this is an original, by the way, I heard Cal Newport saying this the other day too, we now place a lot of value in terms of productivity on being busy. So the more we do is a badge of honor. I'm so busy, life is so busy, so much busy. And that's almost viewed as a positive. There's a reinforcement there for us. There's a positive reinforcement. Oh, God, he's really busy, must be. But in my experience, not having any space, intentional space in my kind of life or my day, my week, whatever it might be, at some point leads to complete burnout, overwhelm, because most of the positives I get out of the space are the creativity, the ability to plan, the ability to think, and my decision making. And that lets me decide and choose the right things I need to be working on or focused on, whether it's myself, my family, my business, whatever it is. Without that space, I just have no time, zero time for that. And my natural reaction is to create less space. So the worse I feel about not having space and feeling overwhelmed, the more I want to do. And I said earlier on, like for example, in the studio here, whatever, there's days I need space to work on the business, to think about things, to really like, it's a creative process here as well, to really like, what am I doing next? Why am I doing this? What's the vision? Am I clear? But I would rather have clients in here because then I don't have to think about all that stuff, because that stuff is scary, and that stuff means I have to like acknowledge that maybe I'm not where I want to be right now. But if I have clients in here, it's busy, and it means, oh, well, everything must be fine, so I'll just do more of that and do more of that, and you end up just driving with your head in the sand, because you're ignoring the fact that you need space to think about these things because it's uncomfortable. So at the moment in my life, everything I touch off gives me that message. You need more space, you need more space. I read Essentialism by Greg McKeown. I'd known about this book for years, never read it. For some reason, I was like, I need to read that right now. One of the main core principles in that is you need to create space to figure out what is essential. And if you don't create space, you don't know what's essential. So you just do random shit for your entire life. And you mentioned, what's that linked to as well? You mentioned that just before we started here.
Or live life by design.
Live life by design. Yeah. So there's no way you can design your life or know what's essential if you don't have that space. So I read that book. It was really, really powerful. Every podcast I listen to, I seem to be getting the message, create space, create space, create space. You did a podcast yesterday with Gary McGann, which is excellent, by the way. People should go and listen to that when it's out. But all I was getting from all the points you were making was, intentional, create space, relax, be okay with this, trust the process, does not have to happen now, create space. So I think why we're doing this today is all I've been able to think about recently is creating space. So we're going to kind of explore what that looks like and how to do it.
Yeah, as you're talking there, what's popping up for me is presence. I think when you create that space, you become more present in your day. And then when I don't create that space, it's almost like life kind of takes over and I'm just not engaged. It's so unconscious. And it's no real way of living, because even talking about that conversation we had with Gary yesterday, like it's a much more empowered state when you kind of feel like you have some resemblance of control. I think when you're more present, you just feel more in control. And particularly in like likes of kids and stuff, like, you know when you're present and not present. And when you're present, fuck me, it's amazing. Like, it's such a lovely experience to be and play and love your child for just that moment, as opposed to, I haven't got time, or I'm overwhelmed here, or fucking stop annoying me. And it's nothing to do with them. It's all you, because you haven't created that space.
Yeah. Even that Carl Jung quote that I've mentioned probably 10 times in this podcast, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will control your life. Even that has a different meaning to me now. It's like, create space, fucker. Because you can't make the unconscious conscious until you have a little bit of space and time to do that. It's just the way we work. And like, I spoke with Padraig recently about being regulated, and I speak to Jill about this all the time and stuff like that. All I can see now is, if you don't create the space to be regulated, you can't think about any of these things either. Like, it's all connected for me. But I think, rather than the abstract concepts of like regulate yourself, it's coming back to, you need some time, and you just need nothing around you. You need to intentionally have nothing going on, nothing going through your head for you to start to recognize these signals. Like, how do you know if you're regulated or not regulated? Sure, there's some physical signs, but you're not going to look for them. Or even if they are there and they're quite obvious, you're not really going to feel them or absorb them unless you have space to kind of sit in them and just be present, as you said, and like be really, really intentional about, okay, this is how I feel and this is what I'm going to do about it. And then you can move forward and go back into the busy world, but at least then you've got a direction to what you're doing.
Yeah, because what about your email then? Like, what was the kind of message behind this idea of creating space?
I think the take-home message, and as you know, anyone listening to this now, I always like to try and have a point, not just talk. Like, a lot of what we do is just talk about this stuff. It's conversation, but I would like a point, and we'll have a point to this episode as well. Like, what can we do next? What can we take home? I think for me, the point of doing the email was for me to tell myself again, you have to consciously do this. It doesn't just happen. You have to really, really decide, right, you have to do this. You have to put this space into your calendar, because if you don't, we are so busy. There are so many other things that will take that space. They're fighting for it. Like, they're vying for that empty slot in your calendar, that 5 minutes when you could be sitting on your bed doing breath work. No, it could be scrolling, or it could be reading, or it could be doing something else. So even if it's in the positive sphere, which we would view it like, I could be doing self-improvement. This is something we talked about with you as well. Like, all the different things you would do because they have a point and a purpose in my personal development and my productivity for today, and it's an economic use of my time. And that's still not space. It's still just more. And this is what I tend to do when I'm feeling like a bit stressed and overwhelmed. Like, why don't I feel good? Why am I not getting all the tasks done? Do you know what I need? More books and podcasts. Because the answer's in there somewhere. It's never, do you know what I need? Fucking nothing. I just need to sit here and do nothing for a while and stare at a wall.
That's a huge realization for me, you mentioned there, because like I do the ice baths and I do the training, I do like the difficult things, and you're like, I'm not really getting much from this, because again, it's more like kind of the outcome, and I should, as opposed to like doing nothing. Again, literally doing nothing, going for a walk in nature, again, listening to an album or something like that. And I find that really difficult, because it's like, what the fuck are we getting from this? That's the whole point. Nothing. Just give yourself some space to breathe.
I remember, like, we'd go for walks around in Holywell here, and I'd say to you, like, I think, you need to do, and you'd even know, you're like, I need more play, I need more this. And I was like, well, what are you going to do? I was like, I'm going to do jiu-jitsu, because then I can blah, blah, blah. I said, no, but what about play? Well, it is play, because then I can blah, 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 blah. And I was like, all right. And I was like, I'm going to do ice baths. I was like, why are you doing the ice baths? Because then it'll give me the energy to blah, blah, blah. I was like, there's always a because here.
Yeah.
And I know we're talking about creating space in an intentional way here, because it will have an outcome. But really, the whole idea is, you don't go into that space with a specific outcome in mind. You're just like, I'm putting an hour in here and I'm going to do nothing. And there's no expectation on it, zero expectation. Whereas when you do the ice bath, you expect to be energized. When you do the meditation, the breath work, you expect to regulate yourself. When you do the walk, you expect to have a connection with nature, because Huberman said that it affects your walking linear motion of the eyes and looking at the horizon. Like, when you get up in the morning and you look at the sunrise, because you expect the better sleep that night. Whereas with the space thing, I think the whole intention has to be nothing, like no expectation. You can't think, when I come out the far side of this, I'm going to have a revelation, or I'm going to understand myself a little bit more. I think you can know that in the back end, but for that specific hour, you just go, right, I'm just going to sit here.
And also, as you're saying that then, because we could actually still do those things, the ice bath and the nature and the exercising and the writing, but then just focus on the process and not actually worry about at all what's going to come from this. Just like, again, be present, just doing the thing for the sake of doing the thing.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it because I'm not expecting this thing. Because I'm just doing the thing, and I'm really present. And that's a good thing I found with ice baths, is that it's essentially a meditation practice when you're doing it, as in like you're trying not to die, in the sense that the body's like trying not to die in the cold water, and you are just much more present. So rather than me doing this to get energy for afterwards, just the fact of me doing it and bringing presence to my life. And if I can sit with that thing more, that brings more presence in general. Tough thing to do though.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's reverse a little bit because we're going to finish this episode with some kind of practical takeaways. Okay. But let's explore this idea of space a little bit more. I mentioned Cal Newport there, had a very interesting conversation he was involved in, and he was specifically mentioning like a lot of this shift I said about where we now place our value in terms of how productive we are.
Yeah.
It's gone away from the output. It's gone away from the value of the thing that we're doing.
What do you mean the output? From the actual action step or the quality of it? Or
So I think, let me try and explain what because I'm going to butcher this. He explained it way better than I will. But rather than us now being, in a lot of cases, not all cases, rather than us being really focused on, okay, you spent this time and this was the thing you created and oh my God, it's beautiful or it's really helped or it's moved the company along or it's very, very valuable or it's more about how busy you are in a day. That's kind of, we've shifted towards, that's how we're being judged on how busy we are. Like we wear it like a badge of honor. And he was talking about examples of this in the workplace. Like if you work in a corporate environment or in a big team or a big company or a big business, there's generally internal communication systems. Slack is the one that he mentioned, and it's the one I've never used it before. It's opened yesterday for the first time for a project we're doing. But on these platforms, there's constant monitoring of your output and of your hours and of how busy you are. And people who work with companies who've had to work from home during COVID and stuff like that will be familiar. Like you have to be online, you have to be seen to be doing things. And it reminds me of, was it a Cup of Soup ad years ago? Did you ever see that ad? And your man is in an office. And I can't remember what the actual slogan was, but basically the whole ad was him just running around the office with this cup in his hand, and people would say, "Oh, John," and he'd go, 2 minutes, I'm just," and because he was always in motion, no one ever questioned, like, what actually does John do?
Yeah.
He did fuck all. And this is the whole thing. Like, he's just running around. And he just looked so busy that no one ever questioned what he was doing. So I think it's that idea of you're being monitored, obviously companies, KPIs and KPAs and all these different things, but in general, on a day-to-day, you're being monitored and judged by how busy you look. And we almost internalize that and feel guilty if we're not busy all the time. And to my point about being in here, if I'm in here and there's clients and there's things happening and there's a podcast going, I'm like, oh, at least I don't have to feel guilty. I fucking know that these aren't the big lever movers. And there's other things I need to be working on that have a bigger outcome or a more positive outcome. But I'm busy.
That's interesting you're saying that, because I think I really resonate with that idea of having the guilt. So I can't make the change. I have to be busy or I have to do these things. But I suppose if you kind of take it back to the analogy of kind of training and the adaptation, there's going to be a level of discomfort with this that we probably have to sit with. So our nervous system is so used to being busy. It's so used to being go, 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 go. So we should almost expect the discomfort when we're creating this space. So it's like, if we know there's going to be resistance, we know there's going to be discomfort, that's like, okay, no, wait a second, we don't have to get away from this. That's okay. That's normal. And in fact, this is actually potentially what I'm trying to get away from. It's why I'm so busy. If I just distract myself, if I just keep going, I don't have to sit with that discomfort. I just had that realization there as you were talking. And that's what has changed for me as well. When I'm able to sit with that discomfort, then you do get some level of contentment and peace as you work through it. But it's very difficult to sit with that discomfort, and you've got to work through that in order to get that kind of contentment or peace. For
sure. Yeah, and you mentioned an interesting word there, guilt as well. That's a huge part of it. You feel guilty if you're not doing something. And I think this is environment dependent as well. Like, obviously, we own businesses. There's people who work in companies. There's people who have different types of jobs. People work for the civil service. People, all sorts of different environments. And I think it does manifest differently in different environments. But definitely from my experience doing this, because I've decided and I've put it out there to the world, I own a business and I do this thing and I am the boss. I've taken that responsibility. Now, if I'm not constantly in motion, I feel guilty because it's on me. And why am I not busy? I'm not busy because I'm not doing the work. I'm not doing the work because so just be more busy, be more busy, be more busy. And I found that in my experience and in my network of people like yourself and other like small, medium business owners, that's very common. There's a guilt for us attached to it. If we can't fill every hour of every fucking day, that's a problem because we're not moving forward. We're not being productive. We're not optimizing. And then you have what's fueling that is all of the hustle culture. And like, don't get me wrong, I learn a lot from the likes of Hormozy and all these different people. But that mindset and attitude, it doesn't serve me because I end up, I can't decide what the right things are to do. So just do everything all the time. Nothing is effective. Nothing is efficient. And then I feel shit, feel tired, burn out, but feel guilty because I'm not actually moving the business forward. And that's just a cycle over and over and over and over and over again.
That's good. As you're talking there now, again, what's resonating with me is just this idea of kind of values then as well. Because I think we all chase this thing externally, or again, what we maybe think we should be chasing. And you always hear all the time, and we've mentioned on the podcast for people who have been successful and earned loads of money, they're saying that's not the thing. That's not the thing. yeah, like obviously we feel that from a kind of security perspective, like we have to earn more money and I should be keep progressing the business or whatever. But then are we actually living a life, of real intent or that we actually value?
Yeah.
Because then otherwise we're not going to be peaceful or content, and we're going to try to just keep go and not create that space.
Yeah. Even that is an interesting conversation, because if you think about the whole, it's not the money. It's not the money thing. Think about that line from Naval always sticks with me as well. It's easier to realize your, hopes and dreams. It's easier to realize your desires than to denounce them.
Oh, yes.
So like, it takes so much more energy for the rest of your life to say, I don't want the money, I don't want the money. Then just to fucking earn the money and then go, okay, it wasn't the money, but I've got other values, so that's fine. Now the money thing isn't a worry anymore. Let's focus on the other things. Apparently it's easier to do that. I still have to figure that one out. Apparently it's easy. But even to be able to do that, to earn the money, you still have to be focused. Like even if you want to do, right, well, just do this thing to stop worrying about the money side of things, because money is a stress for most people. Even to be able to do that, you have to work on the important things. And to work on the important things, you need the space. So you can't even just bury your head in the sand and be super busy and earn the money and then figure it all out, because that rarely works. Because you're not going to earn the money unless you're effective and efficient at what you do. And you can't be effective and efficient unless you create the space.
I think go back to another Naval quote: find work that is play to you. Because, and then it looks easy from the outside in. But again, that would require you to create space. To go, well, what is play for me? What do I enjoy doing? You know what I mean? As opposed to just doing what I've always done or what I feel like I should do. And again, there is a discomfort there going like, okay, I'm going to take time out here. I'm either going to explore, or maybe I have responsibility. I've got kids, I've got a mortgage, and I'm going to go left of centre here and be like, I'm going to sit with myself for 3, 4, 5 hours a week and go, I'm going to work and see, can I do something different? But the responsibility maybe stops you doing that. So there's a discomfort of actually leaning into that. So I just keep going back to this idea maybe of like the resistance is kind of inevitable when you create this space. And maybe that's the idea, is to sit with that resistance and not just try to distract yourself by being busier. That's easier said than done, obviously. Yeah,
it's weird, isn't it? It's kind of, it sounds counterproductive. If you're just listening to this and it's not really resonating, it probably sounds counterproductive. Doing nothing, most people say, I'd love to just have time to sit down and relax and do nothing, but we're so resistant to it because of these negative internal feelings, because of the guilt, because of and again, want to be very, very clear about this. In my experience, most people do have these responsibilities, the mortgage and the bills and the family and all that kind of stuff. Whatever the drivers are, most people have these responsibilities. So it's not that we should all feel bad about not being creating a space. Oh, God, you're terrible because I'm creating a space here. Because it's not. It's a human response to go, well, no, I feel really guilty or I have fear here, and it's natural for us to lean away from that. So this is something that by its very nature seems like it should be really, really easy, but because it's doing nothing, like literally doing nothing. But it's probably one of the hardest things for most of us to do. And then to add to that, and I always bring this caveat in, the pace of the world that we live in today doesn't give a fuck about us creating space.
No.
It wants to fill that space all the time. If there's our attention is what's being monetized now. Like our attention is the new gold, as they say, is attention. That's being filled constantly. There's a million different things you could fill that space with. So even if it's not work, it's the phone or it's the social media or it's the Netflix or it's the drinking or it's the something, there's always something to fill that space. So there's never not a choice for you to make. So it's always a choice. So maybe hundreds of years ago, you could sit and there'd be nothing else to fill your time and you could actually just do nothing by just sitting. But now if you just sit, there's a million things you could potentially do from that sitting position. So you're fighting this active war for that space too. So number one, we have a fear and we're leaning away from it anyway. And number two, there's something warm and fuzzy that we're leaning towards as we're leaning away from what we should be doing. And it's like, yeah, come over here. I'll fill the space for you. I'll fill the space. You're like, oh, comfort. Okay.
And as you're talking there, that's, we said it before as well, kind of gaining the awareness first and foremost, because you're so busy, because there's so much distraction, because you're just kind of doing what you've always done. You might not have the awareness around wanting to make the change or how you're actually living, because maybe you're not living with real intent. You're literally just doing what you've always done.
Yeah. Talk to me about TME.
TME. Well, I actually have a TEM, but sure, we'll go your way. So this idea of kind of fast tracking your results or creating more space, and what's at our disposal is time, energy, and money. And there's a few different ways that I've obviously used it in my life to help me create space or kind of to live a life of more meaning or value to me.
So don't tell me the ways yet. Maybe talk to me about how does this fit in with space?
So sorry, time, energy, and money. So basically how you can spend your time, how you can spend your energy, and how you can spend your money. There's opportunities here that allow you to create more space. And if not necessarily create more space, potentially get more awareness and live with more intention, which I think as a result of that, more space can be created. So this may not necessarily get you the space created straight away, but is brings you on the path to be able to create more space.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So like obviously the very first one I'll just go through is time. And we've mentioned it already, but like a lot of us don't live with any real intention. So I've been on this podcast before talking about the calendar training that we have, and we use with our clients, and all that really is organizing your week ahead and looking back on the week gone by. But just say organizing your week ahead. Really, it's actually just being more intentional with your time. And it might sound really simple and easy, but just think about it. Anyone listening to this right now, do you genuinely map out what you do day to day or week to week? And most of you, maybe we work 9 to 5, so that's kind of a given. But with your family, with your training, with the hobbies that you have, the things that you want to, a lot of us don't. And if you can just be more intentional with your time, it's unbelievable how all of a sudden you have the opportunity of then creating more space. Because that would have been massive for me around alcohol. As I'm mapping out my week, I'm like, I'm in rag order now for the last 2 or 3 days. Oh, I got pissed at the weekend. And as that keeps coming up, I'm like, wait a second, this is really impacting me. And I actually don't want to live my life like this. So now I can change that time. I can create that space. And alcohol is not really what it used to be for me 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago. And that's what I mean. If you can just be a bit more intentional with your time, I think it allows you to be on that path to create more space. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
What do you think in terms of time?
I think this whole thing centers around time. Really, so, look, time is the most valuable resource we have. To talk about a cliche, and it's limited. It is a finite resource. We only have a certain amount of time.
Yes.
Whereas like money and stuff like that is not necessarily like you can always create more money. There's no real limit to that, but there is a definite limit to our time, whatever that might be for each one of us.
Yesterday's podcast, I did mention Molly May. Remember?
Oh, Jesus Christ.
She mentioned we all have the same 24 hours, and she got fucking abused for it.
Yeah, but I think it's become one of those things. What's your man's name? I don't know his name, but you've seen this clip going around going, I have 3 days and 24 hours. My first day starts from 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. My second day starts from blah, 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 blah. So that's 3 days work done with it.
Ed Moylet, I think it was, he said that.
Is that who it is?
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Yeah, it's fun. But that's become memeified now because like this idea, we all have the same 24 hours. Yeah, we all have the same 24 hours, but we all don't have the same level of responsibility in those 24 hours. So we all have limitations on how we can use the 24 hours. However, the opposite side of that same coin is we all have flexibility in how we can use those 24 hours. So I think, yes, I'm not familiar with the exact Molly May quote or the context of the quote, but I think this gets lost in the old fucking I'm right, you're wrong battle the whole time. Like you have to pick one side or the other. We do have 24 hours. We all have different limitations and contexts as to how we can spend those 24 hours, but we do all get a degree of choice as to how we spend the 24 hours. And a lot of us give that choice and control away, which I think is what we're leaning into here.
Yeah, definitely. I'm leaning into, and then particularly I'm leaning into responsibility because I'm a father. I've got 2 kids. I have clients. I have staff look after. My time is much more valuable now than it was 10 years ago. So if I don't personally live with more intent, I'm not going to be better for those around me. I'm not going to be able, because my time is even more valuable than it was 10 years ago. I had much more free time. I had much more opportunity of doing whatever the hell I wanted to do. I don't have that anymore. So I don't want to let the responsibilities I have in my life stop me progressing or doing things that I really want to do. That's not to say that I'm perfect and I get it right, but I certainly want to make sure that I'm being more intentional with my time because I want to be a certain father. I do have aspirations and goals that I want to achieve. And that just means I have to look at that as a time and going, can I leverage and use that to create that space?
Yeah, for me, I feel like a less abrasive way of looking at this personally is it's more an empowerment piece. I can decide how I spend my time. Sometimes it feels like I can't possibly change my job. I couldn't possibly, like, again, we really, as humans and personally speaking, we get attached, like I'm attached to what I've done here because it's what's the sunk costs fallacy or whatever it's called, the sunk cost bias. I sunk time and effort and energy and money into this, and also ego. So I'll be embarrassed if I have to stop this because like, I'm building this business, has to be successful, else I'm a failure and all my friends will laugh at me. So we've sunk so much into this, it feels like I don't have any control over what I can do. So the days I'm not feeling great, I'm like, there's nothing I can do about this and it's all terrible. I could literally shut this thing down tomorrow and do something else. I could. It wouldn't be ideal. It wouldn't be optimal. It would involve risk. Sure, all of those things are factors. I could still do it. There's nobody handcuffing me saying I have to do this. Now, again, people have different situations and there's financial considerations and stuff like that, but I don't think that they are as severely or strictly imposed as we think. I think we limit ourselves. So for me, why I said this is a less abrasive perspective I take, it's very empowering to look at 24 hours in my position and in a lot of people who are listening's position and go, yes, there's a lot of commitments here, but I can change most of them. Most of these 24 hours I can decide what to do with. I'll decide I want to sleep for 8 of them. That's fine because I value my health. I'll decide I want to spend 2, 3, 4, whatever it is in a day with my family. I decide I want to spend 2, 3, 4 working on myself. And it was really, Owen Lacey actually helped me with this as well when he was looking at, I remember asking me a question like, okay, what does the day look like in the business? I was outlining it. I was here at 8:30 and I'm leaving at 6:30 and just squeezing in before I come to the family. And he's like, why don't you go home at maybe like 3? I was like, the fuck are you talking about? Like just 3.5 hours I could work there left. But it's like, but you're the boss. No, but like that's prime working time, 3 till. It's like you can decide what prime. Like when are you most effective? I was like, in the mornings, like the afternoons, I'm really slow. It's like, why not maybe work a bit more in the mornings and less in the evenings? And then it's like, well, I have to go home and cook the dinner and do that. And it's like, well, go home early, have your dinner, and then you can see the kids. And when they go to bed, you can do another hour. And I was like, but I had no real. I was like, he's actually right there. I can decide what I do, but I've locked myself into this idea of what my time has to be, because this is what most people work 9 to 5 or 9 to 6, whatever it might be. So that's what I should do. And that's a self-imposed limitation based on what I see around me, as opposed to the flip of that is I can actually decide every single minute of every day, basically what I do. Yes, I have 3 kids. Yes, I have a business. Yes, I have bills to pay and all that kind of stuff. But there's loads of flexibility in there. So now I'm in control of my time again. Now, again, not something I'm very fluent in, but really try and constantly remind myself about how much control I have over that time that I can leverage to create more space.
Well, a couple of things I want to say, but you're saying there like you haven't done it perfectly or leaned into that and all, but at least we always have conversations and you've got much more awareness around how you do want to live. So again, this pain, while you might not be acting right now, the pain will keep ebbing and flowing away at you, that we're going to make the change eventually, because we do know what we want to achieve, and me and you are going like, I'm not doing it, and we're seeing it. I think, again, it's not about just making the change right now, but having the awareness and the intent that like, I really do want to make the change. I think eventually then if you keep leaning into that, you will make that change.
Yeah. And I think why I like to do this on mic is so it doesn't just become a talking shop. I mean, you could high five each other for the next 5 years, talking about how we're going to do this and all these lovely things. And here's a quote I read. But sometimes when you do it like this, you're really aware I've put this out there. So like I have to do it. Yeah. So that accountability.
And just the last one then on time maybe is because I already talked about it, but presence. So not necessarily about being more intentful, but we've all felt present in moments of our life, again, with kids or in work or in flow doing something. And I think that's what we're trying to find. So when we can create that space and we're living more in presence, I think we start to just live more in a playful, at ease, creative, curiosity manner. And life just kind of flows along. It's like that Alan Watts kind of quote he says about the river. Flow with the river, as opposed to hold on to the side, and then all of a sudden the river, you feel that resistance. When you can just let go and flow with life, flow with the river, it's easy. And I think that's what the idea with time, when you're more intentful and you can get more present, ideas come and your curiosity, and you have that energy, potentially you can make more money because you're much more in flow, and you're not trying to get more energy or make more money. You're just more present. And as a result, these things can kind of come about. And shout out to Colin Reid, who's listened to this podcast. I had a great conversation with him this morning, a client of mine, and he mentioned about how he's getting more present. And he went home and his daughter says to him, Jesus, Dad, you're really happy these days. What's going on? And he was so elated going like, oh my God, but then also, holy shit. So I haven't been happy. But nothing's really changed, Brian, apart from I feel more present. So now he's more engaged. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. But he's more engaged. So he didn't even try to be happier. He didn't try to be a better dad. You're just more present. And as a result, you can actually end up doing whatever the hell it is you want to do better. I think that's the importance of time. I think what we're all trying to get is just more present.
Yeah. Did you tell Colin that I think I tried to buy a very specific type of mineral oil off him for my KTM?
I didn't, because you know why? I haven't got a clue about fucking cars and motorbikes. You lads, all this, I don't know what the hell you're talking about, but no, Colin, Dan wants some free stuff. I'll buy.
I didn't want some free stuff. I was trying to buy, like the KTM I have is like it's fucking stupid, really specific type of oil, and I couldn't get it anywhere. And I just saw this company, which obviously you mentioned Colin worked for, and I only put I have an email that I sent to him like maybe 8 or 9 years ago. It's so random, yeah. Now he's a client of yours.
It's a small world.
Yeah.
Anything else on time then, maybe before we
no, I think time is the most important one to me there. I think that idea of you have, and actually what you said there about the river,
Alan Watts
quote,
yeah.
That sometimes it's interesting, that can be conflated sometimes. You don't want to just be carried along by the river. You don't want to be the leaf on the wind. You want to be the wind or be the river, but I understand that idea of like don't resist all the time as well. So you do want to make your own decisions, and you do want to live with intent, because the other version of that quote, not an Alan Watts quote, is if you're a leaf in the wind, you're blowing whatever way the wind is blowing. So that's not good either, because that's not a life by design. It's being designed for you because you're the leaf. So maybe there's a happy medium in the middle there. Like you do want to float, be like water, as Bruce Lee said. yes, you don't want to be resisting all the time. But the only way I think you can do that is if you have the time and the space to kind of think of like, what do I actually want? Lean into that, go with it, and not overthink the small stuff, the 80%. Don't get caught up in that, because then there's resistance all the time there and you're not really flowing with the river, I suppose. Fair enough?
Yeah, 100%.
Do you want E or M next?
Yeah, I'll go with E maybe before we go to money maybe. So energy. And I'll go back to, again, they're all connected to some degree, but looking at your time and looking at what gives you energy. So I've talked about this in the past of keystone habits, and a keystone habit for me is exercise. So as much as it is about being in good physical condition, I just know the energy it gives me physically, mentally. I didn't train today yet, but I trained yesterday and didn't really want to train and felt amazing afterwards. And I just know then that like I'm able to do more from life. So if I look at like what gives me energy, playing with Sailor gives me energy. Reading, developing myself gives me energy. Creating that space for myself gives me energy. So like if I just keep distracting myself and just keep go, I just know it's going to drain my energy, and that's not sustainable long term. And I've only known this by doing that, so by making the mistakes. But then just framing time around what does give you energy, and then you genuinely in your day, in your week, doing things that give you energy.
Yeah. It's actually double-edged, isn't it? Because you need the space to give you the energy, but you need the energy to create the space. Because a lot of the time, like maybe you have the time, maybe you do have the time, but the thoughts of having to create the space requires energy. Like, because it's as we said earlier on, you want to lean away from it. It's scary, it's uncomfortable, there's friction. You need energy to actually create that space. So it's not a passive thing. So if you're not managing your time to do the things that give you energy, you'll never create the space. And if you never create the space, you'll never get the energy to do the things.
But isn't that kind of the idea? Because I've burnt myself out. And when I look at my time, I'm not doing things that give me energy. So I have less energy and I'm doing less of those things. And you're right, like chicken or egg, what's coming first?
Yeah.
But I do know if I flip it then and start to do the things, even though I don't feel 100%, I'm going to be able to get that energy back. If I create that space, that energy will come back. But if I just keep ignoring that and just going down the path, that energy is never coming back because I'm just constantly depleting it away from myself.
And I suppose this is why this is, again, there's not only one answer to this. There's multiple ways you can do this, which we'll get into some practical strategies towards the end here. But like, even if you're really struggling to create the space, you could start doing the things that give you a little bit of energy, and that'll help you create more space, which will help you more, like, or even if you're okay at creating the space but not good at doing the things, by creating the space, you'll start to identify the values and the things that maybe are a little bit, there's a little bit less resistance towards that could give you energy. Maybe it doesn't have to be the gym session 3 or 4 times a week, but you'll never really know that unless you create some space. And like, again, to bring it back to the hustle productivity culture today, like, the only thing in our heads is, well, I got to get up at 5 a.m. and do this workout because the workout's going to give me the energy. The ice bath's going to give me the energy. I have to do all these things. But maybe that's not you. Maybe that is not going to work for you. And the only way you'll ever figure that out is by having that little bit of space to go like, do you know what gives me energy? Fucking reading a book in a coffee shop. That gives me loads of energy. So maybe I just need to do that a little bit more. And then you do that and you feel a little bit more energized, a little bit more vision, and you go, right, now I'll create more space because I have the energy to invest into the space. So like, there's multiple ways you can come at this. Again, linked in with my recent conversation with Padraig as well. Like, when you're not feeling good, there's a few things that you can just start to do, even though you're not feeling good. And you're going to feel a little bit better from doing the things, a bit of self-care, like play, all these kind of things. And that'll then just spiral a little bit, and you can create more space, create more energy, create more space. But the opposite is true, as you've said. When you don't have the energy, you create less space. You create less space, you have less energy, and that can just spiral. You stop taking care of yourself. And all of a sudden you're burnt out, and you're looking at your life and you're going, I'm not doing any of the fucking things that give me no wonder. And that usually happens when you get to like a really low point. So to avoid spiraling to the really low point, there's little strategies you can use here to either create space or create energy, because they're going to benefit each other. They're going to be mutually beneficial. Yeah,
but you're right though. I think that there's no kind of perfect answer here. And but as you're talking there again, I'm going to go back to it. It's values. It's quite an individual thing. So what you value will dictate what gives you energy, And again, this is the joys of being human. 10 years ago, my values were different. So what gave me energy 10 years ago just simply won't give me energy now. Or some things might, I suppose. But like, again, me being a dad was one of the catalysts for me stop drinking alcohol. Like, it wouldn't have been the case. So my values have clearly fundamentally shifted. And you just got to make sure that you are, again, creating the space to go like, what do I value? What do I want? It's just a question I think we have to keep asking ourselves.
Yeah, I wrote that down because I want to come to it, because you have a nice strategy for the values and stuff like that as well. I went through it with your tele, even if you don't remember, I'll remind you when we get there, but we'll come back to that one. Okay, so we are now on to money. And it's a similar one, I suppose, in the sense of maybe your values as well, but how you spend your money. And it's a huge thing because people don't see spending money on themselves as an investment.
they see it as an expense probably. And I would have been guilty of that in the past. And like obviously the simple thing would be something like going out and getting pissed at the weekend and investing in a gym membership, we'll just say. You know, there's no real investment in terms of that getting pissed every weekend. Now the investment might be socially, it might be a different thing in terms of the intent. But I'm talking about like doing that kind of just with no real intention every single weekend, as opposed to maybe going to the gym. So just looking at your money and going, what am I investing in?
Yeah.
Simple as that, you know, because then I talked to you off podcast about a big thing with money for me was mentorship and coaching, particularly mentorship with my business, for example. I invested in a mentor and he was able to create space for me and my business.
Very good.
Just by a different perspective. He goes, well, wait a second, Brian, how about this? Oh, I never thought about that way. So I didn't need to have the energy. I didn't even need to have the time. I just needed to have an investment in myself to someone who could see or has the answer or the experience that I don't have. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, deadly. And now I can look at my time, my energy and go, I can actually focus these things on a different thing. And it's been a game changer for me. So in everything I do in terms of my own, everything is investment for me. Like mentorship or coaching or my body or learning, even this podcast, like I'm able to have conversations with people. So it's investment in myself to learn more. So if you can just kind of change that reframe and go, well, how am I investing my money in myself?
Yeah.
I think it's a nice reframe.
Yeah, and it's nice to, like, money ties in nicely with energy and time as well, because money is just another form of exchange of energy. That's all it really is. If you break it right down, it's a form of, I've invested energy to earn this money, and I can invest money to earn more energy. And what's more important to you in life, realistically, it's the energy and the space and the time and all that kind of stuff. And again, if we were to look at all these people on their deathbed, they'll say the same thing. It's all about the time spent and the experiences they had and the connection, the relationship, the family, etc. So if money is the focus, you're kind of missing all those points. But you can use the money, as you've explained there, to invest in creating more of that energy for yourself. And the better investor of money you are, not to earn more money, but to give you actually back. Because that's what most people genuinely want when they start off on this journey, isn't it? We want the lifestyle. We want the security. And
you mentioned time being the biggest resource.
And we want more time. And this is a big thing from Naval that he hammers all the time, from the man who's done it and made the money. Like, don't listen to me, listen to someone who's actually done the thing. And he talks about your personal value, and like there's loads of different ways of looking at this. Some people don't like some of these, but like put a value on your time, and if anything falls below that value, outsource it, because that's just time it's taking from you. It's like, yeah, you could build a website, yeah, you could do the nitty gritty, yeah, you could do the editing or whatever like that, but that's more time that you're losing there. And if you have the money available, you can invest the money, because ultimately the time you get back from investing that money is, you're going to make more money. You can always make more money, but you can't make more time. So that finite resource you spend every week that goes by that you've done something that you didn't need to do, while having the investment there that could have gotten you back the time, is time you're never getting back. Whereas the money, it seems, comes back when you actually invest yourself properly. I'll give it credit space.
Yeah, well, you did say there that money is essentially energy. So,
it's just energy.
Yeah, so if you're able to get more time and more energy, as a result, you're going to get more money.
Exactly.
It's just going to happen.
Yeah.
And not necessarily because you're after, but you're more present, you're more creative, you're more curious, you literally have more energy to give in to this thing that you want to do. And then as a result, it's just easier to do.
And it's actually, because you can shine more light on this, because you work with loads of people who have all the money.
Oh, yeah, more money than I ever have.
Very successful people who have loads and loads of money, but they're coming back to you to try and figure out how to create more space and energy and presence with their family. It's a big one. You constantly mention to me a lot of these really successful people in the financial realm or the business realm. They come to you because they want more time with their money, or they want more purpose to their lives, or they want more sense of connection or relationship or value, and that's all that comes with this space, and you help teach them how to create the space. They have all the money, so they can invest the money to create the space. And then, according to the stories you're telling me, everything gets better for them. Like, their businesses improve even more, and then it becomes more about the value behind what they do, as opposed to just making more money or building a bigger business. There's a real reason there for that, and a sense of purpose, which, as we all know, is extremely important. So I just find the money thing so interesting, because like money scarcity can absolutely cripple. It can cripple you. It's like and people be familiar. Like, I'm holding my hand to my throat here. It's like the slow squeeze. Yeah. It's not, you're not getting choked out, but it's like every second of the day it's a slow squeeze, and you feel that just pressure on your chest and pressure on you. So like, how are we supposed to create energy or a space or anything like that? It sounds really counterproductive here to say just spend more money. You don't have any money to spend, but that's why there's other options here too. Even if financially you're not where you need to be and you can't invest money, you can invest time, or you can invest energy, or you have none of those three. we'll talk about some strategies after this that can kind of kickstart the process, whatever. But they're all so interlinked. There's many ways of doing this. So no matter who's listening now, there's probably a way that you could create more space in your life, and it all comes back to this more space because the solution lies in there somewhere.
Yeah, and you just go back to the kind of money, beliefs around money, because I certainly have negative beliefs around money, and that kind of sensation you mentioned of kind of being strangled, you often then make decisions out of fear. So, you know, how you're spending your time or your energy, you know, it's all commitments or it's distraction or, you know, you're not really moving into a vision because, again, the beliefs around money or whatever you might be saying to yourself, just you're in a fearful state.
Well, here's one that many people will probably resonate with right now. It's financially very tight. You're struggling for money. The bills are coming up. The last thing you're going to want or feel like doing is do nothing. I got a second job and this is why I always say, like, humans are unbelievable. We're so fucking resilient. Like, I'm going to do more. You're already like a nub of yourself. You've no energy. You're low. You're taking care of the kids. You're paying the mortgage. You're doing all these different things. You're under financial pressure, and you're going to make a decision to do more. So, like, that is amazing. It's an amazing thing that we can do, but it's not, in my opinion, very productive because you'll end up sick or burnt out or tired, and that will just mean your life isn't what it could be, and the lives of the people around you isn't what it could be. This is what I'm really trying to learn about it. Like, this is not a guilt thing, or you should do this, or you should create more space. But that little kind of story I told there, many people will resonate with that. Like, they'll feel that, you'll feel that, I'll feel that. When you feel like that and you feel that pressure, you're like, I have to do more. Like, I'm going to drive at this and do more. And it's a very, very difficult thing to do, and you become very isolated, and it doesn't work out for a lot of people. It can. So the idea behind this conversation is like, yes, this other option of maybe slowing down a little bit and creating a little bit more space, if possible, sounds like that's the last fucking thing I should be doing is nothing. I should be sitting down doing, like, thinking, no, I just need to go at this. But it's quite possibly in a lot of situations the best thing you could do. I'm
going to take it back to kind of what you're saying there as well, is that if you have the time or the energy or the money that you can invest or do whatever, you're a bit more present. So forget about chasing something or whatever. You're just more content. You're more at peace because this thing that's outside of you or whatever isn't trying to run you. And again, like, we've all felt that presence.
Yeah.
And there's nothing like that presence because it's just so much. Again, go back to that analogy of the river. Life flows as opposed to the resistance. And then whatever the hell can come about that, it's just so much fucking easier.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's look at then to wrap this one up, some practical tools. So time, money, and energy. What are some of the practical things that you could potentially do to start creating this space? And we'll look at all these. We've touched on them basically through the conversation, but we'll look at all the different avenues about time, money, energy. What are some practical kind of starting points that we could look at?
So do you want me to go? Well, again, the first one I already mentioned about time is actually just organising your time.
Organise your time.
It's massive, honestly. It's one of the first things we do with all of our clients. I know myself, I'm massively overwhelmed when I'm not organised, but just having some level of intent of the day and the week ahead. It really is that simple. And I'm mad for reflection because the idea is that I can learn. I'm not going to be perfect. I always make mistakes. I fucking get lost constantly. So can I at least gain some awareness around where I'm getting lost? Because I can then have some control of making that change long term.
That camera was on me, by the way, for your whole spiel.
But like, genuinely, like, honestly, for myself and for clients, like, getting organised, I just think it's a game changer.
Yeah. I know we've talked about this in the last podcast, so it might sound like we're repeating ourselves, but like I said at the very start here, sometimes we just keep saying this thing over and over and over again, and at some point it might stick for me or for you or for somebody listening. So, like, I know we're repeating ourselves with this, like we talked about the calendar training and stuff, but can we go a little bit deeper on that? Like, what does that organising your time look like specifically?
What I do in terms of the practice and writing stuff down and stuff. Like, well, for me, it's two things. I have a Google Calendar, and things are in there about like what I'm doing. So for kind of about 2 weeks in advance, stuff is in there for me. And that's like mainly work related, but then obviously the likes of personal and training, like that kind of stuff goes in there. So that's there. And then I'm writing with some level of intent every day. And that can be like obviously a bit of a gratitude practice, but even like, what do I want to get from today? Who am I today is a big thing. If I'm off for today, if I'm in for today, I'm trying to be that person, and they're two different people, say. I like physically writing day to day. It just allows me to be a bit more creative. It gets shit that's in me out, and then I kind of plan, say, online with that kind of Google Doc.
Yeah.
But there's so many things you can do. I'm not big on telling people how to do it, because I think you can do it any which way that suits you. But this idea of organising your time, I just think it's just key. It's key.
Yeah. And it's funny because when you start to organize your time, you start to see where the space could be. Whereas if you never organize it, you just think you've no space. And like space could be 5 minutes. I keep saying an hour here, but space could be 5 minutes. It could be just be a regular 5 minutes to get used to what that feels like and to deal with the friction and the discomfort of sitting in the space. That's all it needs to be at the start. It could be 1 minute. It could be, but it can't be like, well, I'll go to the gym because that gives me the space. It can't be, oh, well, I'll sit and I'll scroll and it just has to be nothing, in my opinion. I think so. And I'll add one bit to that as well. If this is something that you are prioritizing, because as we've said, this could be like the upstream arbiter of all the positive change in all the other areas of your life, like your family relationship, all these other responsibilities you have, could all be better because you've created space. If this is the priority, I think it should be the very first thing you put in your calendar. And this is coming from someone who knows this and doesn't do it often enough.
Nice.
But it should be it should be almost the very first thing you put on the page.
It's just kind of eat the frog kind of thing. Is that what you mean? Do the hard thing?
Yeah, but the hard thing is not like a business thing or a thing for the boss or a thing for the hard thing is literally nothing.
Yes, the resistance to feel it.
Exactly, yeah. So it's kind of like, I think you look at your calendar, you look at your week, and the week is just a nice unit of time to be able to look at.
Exactly, yeah.
You don't have to look at a day. You might have a really busy day, but look at a week. Is there one spot in that week where you can do nothing for 5 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever it might be, with no expectation on it, but it's going in because I'm just starting to create some space here, and I'm going to see what happens, and I'm just going to practice creating space with no expectation. And as I develop and I get better at it, it'll become clearer to me what the space means, or it'll stuff starts to get a little bit clearer. That's what I've experienced. There's nothing specific I can say. You're going to notice all of a sudden that your vision goes blue when you know exactly where the money is. No, that's not what I'm saying. But I am saying is things just get a little bit less hectic in your own head, and you're able to just pick through thoughts a little bit better. And the more you do it, the more you pick through those thoughts, the less tangled everything will seem, and you'll just get more clarity. And then clarity, awareness, all these different things are, as I said, upstream of better decisions and better relationships and more presence and a better mood and all these different things. So yeah, if that was my input to the practical side of things, the first thing you put in, space for you to do nothing. Not self-care or anything like that. Nothing. Just empty space. Put it in there. And then my problem is be really, really strict with it, because I put it in and then it gets fucking, I have space there. I'll fill that with a client because I'm uncomfortable. Oh, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Happy enough with it?
Yeah, happy with that. Yeah.
Okay. Energy.
Energy then, and I've learned a lot from you over the last couple of years, this connection. So the people you have, the conversations you're having, and particularly the conversations you're having, I think, of who you are. So basically conversations you want to have. So who you are and what you value. But that gives me great energy. Again, being surrounded by you, having these conversations. We always say with our clients, being around these people doing great things really allows you to have that connection and build momentum. That's much more difficult in a different environment where maybe you feel resistance, or maybe you're a little bit different, or people around you aren't doing this. But I just think that kind of connection is what we're looking for at a very authentic, value-based level. And I've learned that massively from you in terms of conversation as well.
Okay. So on that point then, maybe something practical people could do is put a bit of time aside outside of the space time. So this is another little block of time you put aside to start to explore what they value. Now, this creating time in the calendar, I think, should be the priority, because to do nothing, because that'll help with this for sure. But if we're talking specifically about how do we identify the things that are going to give us more energy, because a lot of us think we know what gives us energy. Like, and was it yesterday? Gary said it on the podcast yesterday, and again, this will resonate. A lot of us think that Netflix is my time to chill out and unwind and relax. Scrolling my phone is my time to chill out and unwind. Going to the gym is but they're not. They're all stimulus. They're all input. It's all like training is a hard thing to do. Yes, you do go blank and you start to forget a lot of the things that are stressing you out, but you're still hyper focused on not letting the weight drop on your neck, or like trying to keep the heart rate up, or my next fucking kilometer, or whatever it might be. So that's not necessarily what we're talking about here. So giving yourself some sort of structure to figure out what gives you energy. Like what these conversations give me energy. The gym gives me a different type of energy, but I'm also fucking exhausted after them. Scrolling on my phone it always takes energy from me. Now I can do it in an intentional way if I want to, like, just be entertained for a while, but that doesn't give me energy. Similarly, watching movies doesn't give me energy. It takes energy. But sometimes that's okay. I'm not saying don't do those things, but really trying to identify, like, what are the things in my life that I leave going, like, I'm good to go here. And for me, it tends to be conversation. So that could be something that I value, connection and conversation.
Well, you've mentioned this before in the podcast, but you're saying, what does this look like? You mentioned about people reaching out to start a connection.
Have coffee.
Yeah. Have coffee, send a text message, send a message. I think that's a great start for a lot of people.
It's a great start for a lot of people. It can suck a lot of energy for a lot of people. If you're introverted, if you're not comfortable, you mentioned it, if that's not a comfortable thing for you, you can actually invest a lot of energy in that.
Okay.
And you have to kiss a lot of frogs sometimes too, because, like, you do find, I don't like this term energy vampires, but there are a lot of people out there who they don't really contribute to your energy. And not pointing finger here, but that they actually suck energy from you. It's a lot of small talk and a lot of beating around the bush, and there's a lot of. So I absolutely value that. That's massive for me. It's not necessarily for everybody, so I do advise that's definitely part of the process. But I would say previous to that is just sit down and start like what do I value? What are the things that fill me up? And think like what are the things I leave going, wow, I feel amazing after that. And be honest with yourself, I think is one of the hardest things to do here. But like maybe the first 2 or 3 times you do it, like the pub with the lads. But like sit and think, maybe it does. I'm not saying it doesn't. But in a lot of the cases, it doesn't really give you energy. It's a distraction. It's a release. It's a whatever. It doesn't give you energy. What are the things that like fill the cup? Really cliche, but like what are the things that give back to me? And that they are different. The things that are a release, a stress reliever, are not the same things that fill the cup up. They're 2 different types of things.
And just go back to this idea you're saying there, but kind of find your values and be honest with yourself. Peterson puts it really well. How to be honest. You'll kind of feel something in you and you'll want to say it, and you may even kind of stop yourself kind of saying it, or you don't want it to come up. Like allow that to come up. And that's what we're saying again, but kind of creating that space.
Yeah.
Like it is within you, whether you kind of know it or not. And sometimes we stop ourselves because we're like, oh no, I couldn't do that, or that's fucking, what will they think? Or don't worry, like be honest with yourself and allow what comes up to come up, because that's more what you value.
I'll share my resistance when I'm doing it. If I'm ever writing, like there's a subconscious thought in me that goes, oh, if someone reads this, they'll fucking laugh at me. So what will they think? I was like, no one's ever going to fucking read this. Like, and you don't even have to write it down if that's the thing. You're afraid someone will find it, but do think about it. Like, and you're right. You do get that initial like, oh, I don't want to do that. That's probably where the answer is. So lean into that.
And by the way, maybe this is where I was getting with the connection and conversation. Like when you resonate with someone, they can often hold a space for you to be a bit more truthful and honest with yourself. And that's what I mean, what I get from you and people in my life. You give me the space to be more of myself. And that's really, it energizes me, because I don't have to hold back, or I'm not afraid to speak my truth. And particularly when I don't even know what the truth is. Yeah. I'm just articulating something that's new to me here right now, and you're giving me that space to be able to do that. And that's really energizing. Yeah,
which you mentioned with the money thing as well. A mentor does a version of that, but a really close friend, a confidant could do something like that for you as well. Okay, so there's 2 practical ones for then the energy. Really sit, like put time in to sit and understand what your values are and what really fills you up, number 1, and then potentially have coffee, reach out, have conversations, build connections, and at some point, ideally, you'll find somebody who can hold that space for you. And generally, it's a mutual kind of beneficial relationship. Yeah, you can hold space for each other, and which is really nice.
And values, you mentioned values as well.
And values,
Being clear of what you want and who you are, whatever.
Exactly, yeah. So there's our 2 kind of practical starting points if you want to come at it from an energy point of view, if that's where you have the bit of flexibility in your life, and then money.
I think it's really simple. Money is just investment, because this isn't about then the amount of investment. Just look at what you're currently investing. So if you are genuinely, you don't have much money, just look at what you spend your money on right now. Maybe you are subscribing to something that you don't actually use. Maybe you could actually afford to put in €35 to a gym membership. Like, just look at the investment you're making day to day in all aspects and go, well, does that align with my values? Is that giving me energy? Is that how I want to spend my time? And if it is, brilliant, keep going. But potentially there's a few opportunities you could change there.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. That's a really good one, because I'm very sensitive around the money thing, because
the cost, etc.
Oh well, Brian, we don't all have money to invest in mentorship and this kind of thing, and that's an absolutely valid point. But in a lot of our lives, there are probably areas we could just redistribute that version of our energy, like the energy we're putting into things and people, the money energy we're putting into things that we spend our money on. Just analyze them.
But I think it's a really important point, because we're just reframing this. It's no longer an expense; it's now an investment. But that's a huge reframe, because all of a sudden it's like, I'm investing in a few points with the lads, and that's fine. Maybe that's a great investment that you want to have.
Love that.
Because socially is what you want. But then I'm investing with a few points with the lads. I'm not going to train for the rest of this week. So, is that a worthwhile investment? Is that investment I'm willing to make? Again, if it is, deadly. Yeah. But realize that it might have consequences, and that's fine. So could you change that investment to potentially be doing things that's more aligned with your values?
So a little self-audit.
Ah, nice. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, a little self-audit to look at, which again is an uncomfortable thing. And all of these are not easy. They're uncomfortable, because if you're going to look at the areas you've spent your money in, it's an admission to yourself that you've been spending money in areas that don't serve you. And that's a hard thing for people. Just like sitting by yourself, why it's so difficult is you have to admit to yourself that I've been doing things that don't serve me. And that's why I'd feel it's the taking responsibility. This is developing in my head as I'm saying it, but that's why it feels really uncomfortable, because let's leave the money thing for 1 second. If I sit and think about things that I'm doing in my life that don't serve me, I'm the reason I don't feel good. Not the world, So you have to get out of that victim mindset a little bit and take responsibility. And that's really uncomfortable when you don't have to do it most of the time, because there's the beck and call of all these other things that can distract you from that. So with the money thing, if you have to sit and do a little self-audit, well, I do spend €15 a month on this and don't really use it. And I do have my Netflix membership, and like, I'm only really doing that because I don't want to spend time doing other things, and like it makes me happy just to sit and watch Netflix series and whatever. And again, not saying any of these things are inherently bad, but if you do a little audit and you realise, that's uncomfortable that I spend the money there, because you can redistribute it.
As you're just talking there, because I've actually been thinking about this recently. I invest in Spotify. I think it's €10 a month or something. But I'm actually watching more YouTube, and I haven't invested in the premium of YouTube. And I was just thinking, could I just change that investment from Spotify and put it into YouTube? Because I actually get more educational content from YouTube than I would potentially from Spotify. But but just something like that, a simple little thing on, they're essentially the same thing, but different platforms. And what do I get more for my investment? Yeah. Like it's a really simple thing to look at.
Yeah. This is slightly off point, but just you mentioning YouTube there, because Gary mentioned YouTube yesterday. Guys getting a load of shout into this podcast. just because it was in here yesterday, and there was a lot of really, really nice stuff come out of that. But even YouTube, like I choose to invest a lot of my time in YouTube, but it's never very intentional, because I go into YouTube and whatever comes up I watch. But there's loads of really good content on YouTube.
Yeah.
Like I learn a load about like cameras and mics and stuff like that from YouTube. So maybe I could be a little bit more intentional with how I spend that time. Not using YouTube, but investing my time better in so when I finish watching YouTube, I feel better, because I've been intentional about the time. I've been intentional about, number one, opening the app, and then number two, I've been intentional about why I'm there. I'm there to maybe learn. And yeah, it's not all about learning and personal development all the time. We've been very clear on that. But if I'm going to open the app and when I close it feels shit, that's my fault. So I can change that. I can still open the app, but I can be intentional. I can say, I'm going to spend 30 minutes here. I'm going to watch these 2 videos that I've earmarked and I really want to engage in. It doesn't have to be personal development. It can be entertaining.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm investing this time for 30 minutes to do the specific thing. Then I'm going to close that and I'm going to feel good because I decided to do this. It wasn't decided for me, or I didn't just distract myself because I had half an hour to burn or whatever like that.
And can I maybe bring this full circle? I think what we're trying to get at here, I think, is just the opportunity we all have at our disposal to spend our time, our energy, or our money a certain kind of way. And go back to it, like, we're not saying this so you're progressing in business and your personal development and all. I think we're living with more intent and we're being more present.
Yeah.
So we're just living a life that ultimately we value and we get more fulfillment from, and not because we're getting more, just because we are just being.
Yeah.
More, or being.
And that's the presence you're talking about.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. And to bring all of this even further home in a nice, because it sounds like we went kind of off the topic with the space thing here, but this for us right now, this hour, is our version of the space. Because we're 99% of the time, we're out there in the day, we're not thinking like this. But the fact that we can create this space to come in here, this is our version of creating some space. We put this in on a Thursday morning of a busy week. We're 2 busy men trying to busy, trying to be busy all the time. And we put this time and space in here so we could specifically sit down and talk about this stuff, because it gives us the moment to reflect. I'm not great with the journaling and the writing. This is my version of it, and this is your version of it. We create this space so we can kind of go, oh yeah. And it just resets us again. We talk about the different things, and we just reiterate. And that's what I'm saying. We repeat ourselves a lot because we're just trying to ingrain this as a pattern in us, as opposed to, victim, we just have to go with the flow. We're just busy all the time, no time to do this. And this was one of the things, and you won't mind me bringing this up, but when you weren't feeling good, we weren't seeing each other, and I was giving you a hard time.
Of course.
I was like, you need to fucking come. I don't have the answers for you.
Yeah.
But let's just do the fucking thing.
And go back to it, because you mentioned it already, like, again, when I don't have the energy, obviously I don't have quote unquote the time, but I'm not putting that time in, you know? So again, you can still do it despite the resistance, and go back to the things that give you energy, that you know are going to allow you to be more present. And you mentioned there, like, this hour is just everything for us.
Yeah.
Because we can now leave here with more presence. We have gained some level of awareness, and then we'll just keep doing this. So at least we keep getting that awareness. And like I said, the action will naturally unfold tomorrow or 4 years' time. But if we keep doing this, we just know that we are going to make that change.
If we're still talking like this in 4 years' time, though, there's a problem. The listeners can call us out because we're not taking action.
Yeah, obviously, but we're going to take fucking action. We might have this conversation in 4 years' time without taking action. That won't be fucking talking to you. Fuck off.
Fair. Yeah, look, I think that was a nice exploration of the whole thing. There was some practical takeaways there for people. Big takeaway for me, again, is it has to be intentional to create the space. I don't know exactly what's going to happen for every person listening here when they do create that, but I do know it's going to give a little bit more clarity. And a little bit more clarity leads to a little bit more action. A little bit more action leads to a little bit more space, and just create a positive reinforcement there, as opposed to what tends to happen to me and a lot of us is you spiral. You stop doing the meetups, you stop doing the podcast, you stop reaching out for coffee, you stop being intentional, and that slowly spirals, and there's less space available, and it all feels a little bit hopeless and overwhelming. And that's where a lot of, like, we use words like burnout and stuff like that. For me, that's what that feels like, hopeless. I don't have time for any of this. I can't create the space. I'm guilty. I'm under pressure. There's financial considerations here, blah blah blah, and you just spiral down. You can create the opposite spiral by trying one of the techniques maybe that resonated with you here today, and then just slowly building on that and reinforcing that in a positive way.
And then a big thing for me, what it feels like, that spiral, is just a disconnect with myself and a disconnect with people in my life. And what I think you get from creating that space is a much more connection with yourself and then those around you as well. And it's just kind of finish off here as well. Like, we have our own internal struggles. We have both struggled again over the last 3, 4, 5, 6 months.
We're struggling right now.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah. So again, we're not trying to say that we have all the answers here, but again, this conversation, this way of thinking and living is exactly what we do want. So making sure that we create that space for us is just everything, and that's what I think we're trying to get across in the podcast.
Lovely. Yeah, I have nothing more to add to that. That was
beautiful.
Very good. Yeah.
How long are we?
I think we're under the hour, because maybe we're just about the hour.
Good,
intros and outros. So yeah, people will tell.
And we're back, baby. We're back in the podcast. This is the first one in 4 months.
Hold on, this is you. I fucked up the camera.
We're back in the first one in 4 months.
Yeah. So we're back doing it again. You can fall off the wagon, but you have to get back on.
Now we're back. We're back in this.
Yeah, deadly. Look, really enjoyed it as always, Mr. O'Loughlin. We will see you again next month.
Thank you, sir.